In this video, we'll go through the ins and outs of the third scaffold option, the restaurant scaffolds. The restaurant scaffolds can be found under all the other scaffold pages. There's properties and events, which we've already covered. Rooms, which we're not going to get into because you most likely will never need to edit any of these. Nightlife, which is a legacy field and doesn't have anything under it. And then restaurants are next. Restaurants are organized by brand and then by property code. Click on the EN for English, and you'll see the list of all the current ones. To create a new restaurant scaffold, you'll click New, New Page. You'll enter a title, which will appear in the listing in CQ, and a name, which will correspond to the URL page name. As mentioned before, CQ is intuitive and smart. Since you're in the restaurant scaffold option, you'll see the scaffold template for restaurant. You'll select that one and hit Create. During this video, we're going to go through an already existing scaffold so you can see what's already been entered. Clicking on it will open it in another tab. We'll land on the scaffold page landing page. You'll click Edit this item and you'll enter into the dialog box. As with the other tutorials, there are a lot of fields to fill out in general. The name, the property, the market, the brand, the category of restaurant, the URL, the short description, which powers to a lot of different sections, and the long description, which powers to the detail page that you may need to create after this or is already created. If you're editing within the short description, you'll be editing the list page description on the already live site. If you're editing within the long description, you're editing the detail page. The second tab, Properties, is where you'll put in the ranking information. There's a lot of explanations underneath each of these fields that show you which ranking order you'll put them in. Display Options is an important tab. This tab will determine where the information you're entering will be displayed. You can hide it from the scaffold list. You can make this a featured restaurant. You can mark it as Coming Soon, and it will display a Coming Soon logo over the image in the directionals and in the app. Display Web, Mobile App, and Directory are always set to true. If you leave them as true, your listing will be displayed on all of these different channels. If you want to hide it on a specific one, you'll mark it as false. If you want to hide it from the wayfinding portion of the app, you'll check this box. The Restaurant Details tab has some important core information that you'll need to enter. Additional information, if you don't have any, you don't need to enter it. It's not a required field. Phone number is really important to have. This is what's going to display on the facts section of the detail pages. It will also display in the app and on the directories. Latitude and longitude will influence where it is in the wayfinding portion of the app. The floor also helps with the wayfinding portion. A good rule of thumb that I've mentioned before is if you're editing within an already existing scaffold and it's blank and you don't have any information for it, just leave it blank. Third party contains information for all of our social implementations, the fresh text, location ID, and token, mass relevance for social streams. Tenant ID only applies if you're in the link. As mentioned before, if they're blank and you don't know it, leave them blank. Highlights contains a lot of other core information that's really important for the restaurants. The cuisine type. The categories are only used within the app and the directories. You most likely won't need to add those, but if you do, you would come to this dialog box, CET categories, and then select the one that you wanted to add. Clicking on it will add it. We don't want to really add that to this one, so I'm going to remove it, but that's pretty simple. The chef, if there's a famous chef and you want to include that, average check price, price level, attire, all of these things power to the facts section of the website. The dinner menu is shown in the list page. If you want to add more menus, you can click here and add additional menus if you want to have more than just the dinner one. Meal types, unfortunately, is a legacy tab. Nothing is needed here. You don't need to add anything. It's not used. Hours old is where most of the hours for the restaurants are still located. Hours new is the new section where you can add the restaurant hours. It's pretty intuitive. All the days of the week are listed down there with some instructions if it's for 24 hours. Opening time, closing time, meal name, which is not required, And then we're getting into the image sections. If you haven't seen the video for CQ scaffold images, please click here. And those are the restaurant scaffolds, like all other scaffolds in CQ. You click OK. Since we haven't done anything, I'm going to click cancel, but you'll click OK. And you will be brought back to this page where you can see how all of the changes you've made look in the formats where they are. You won't be able to activate if you don't have permissions to activate. If you do, you would go to the second tab and click activate. If you need to send it through the workflow, you would enter the correct workflow and then send it over to the content team. If you haven't seen the video on the workflow, click here. And that's it. For the next video on our things to do generic scaffold, click here.